morning and good afternoon and good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Greetings from New York. I'm Florencia Tatiosian, and I'm an evaluation specialist at UN Women, the UN Global Champion for Gender Equality and for the empowerment of all women and girls. I'm also the co-chair of EvalGender Plus, a movement to promote the use of gender-responsive evaluation for change. I will be your moderator today. I'm very happy to welcome you to the fourth Future of Evaluation Dialogue, part of a new monthly dialogue series that is a cornerstone of Eval for Action 2.0. Today, we are honoring a very important day, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence against women. And we would like to invite you to explore whether evaluation is a compass that can help us move towards a world free from gender-based violence. And we have today with us Tessie Katsambas, the founder and CEO of Encompass LLC, an evaluation and training organization that was a 2024 Youth in Evaluation Super Champion for their outstanding performance in upholding the Youth in Evaluation standards. Okay. Tessie.
Thank you.
Tessie was your moderator in the previous dialogue on the evaluation's role in building a future fit evaluation.
Thank you,
So
Florencia.
over to you, Tessie.
Thank you so much, Florencia. I am so excited to be here to pass the torch for today's webinar. I just think these series of messages and conversations are so germane and important and in helping us to steer this new generation of evaluation. And today's topic is one of the topics I know is in everyone's heart. So Florencia, have a good session today, and I can't wait for this conversation. Back to you.
Thank you, Tessie. Thank you so much. And I'm so pleased to receive the Eval Torch as the moderator of this important dialogue today. So today is the commemoration of International Day for the Elimination of Violence against Women. And why is this so important to us today? As you know, violence against women and girls is one of the most pervasive and preventable human rights violations in the world. And here's some data from the recent gender snapshot that was published by UN Women this past September. Globally, 1 in 8 women aged 15 to 49 has been subjected to physical and or sexual violence by a current or former intimate partner in the previous 12 months globally. In Afghanistan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Papua New Guinea, prevalence rates exceed 30%. Nearly 1 in every 5 young women aged 20 to 24 was first married or in a union before age 18. Each year, 4 million girls undergo female genital mutilation, with over 2 million before age 5. But we also have some substantial progress on legislation that address this issue, with most measures that have been enacted since the adoption of the United Nations Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women in 1993 and the Beijing Platform for Action in 1995. So by 2024, 84% of countries with available data had specific legislation on violence against women and girls and or domestic violence, intimate partner violence. And some 66% reported establishing a national action plan specific to violence against women and girls, while 78% provided budgetary commitments for services addressing it. So today at the Future of Evaluation Dialogue, we're bringing together evaluation experts and thought leaders to dive into a very important question. Can evaluation be our compass to a future free from gender-based violence? In this session, we will explore how gender-responsive and inclusive evaluation approaches can spark real change, helping interventions hit the mark and holding systems accountable. We will also tackle emerging challenges like technology-facilitated gender-based violence and look at how evaluation can push policy reforms forward. To move forward, I'm very pleased to present 4 evaluation experts with deep experience in gender-responsive and equity-focused evaluation. First, we have Sabas Monroe. He's the former co-chair of the UNEG Working Group on Gender Equality, Disability Inclusion, and Human Rights. He is currently an Evaluation Program Management Officer at UN Human Rights. Sabas, let's start with you and hearing your insight on whether evaluation is our compass to a future free from gender-based violence.
Thank you, Florencia, and thank you, colleagues, for organizing this dialogue. Yes, I think that evaluation can be our compass, but keeping in mind, following the analogy with exploration, that a future free from gender-based violence requires other tools, like explorers need an astral or a chart. The UN Evaluation Group norms and standards recognize this role of evaluation, contributing to learning and decision-making in gender equality, as well as human rights and leaving no one behind. All these years with UNEC and with UN Human Rights, it has been great to confirm that evaluation findings and recommendations have contributed to policies, strategies, awareness-raising campaigns, challenging gender stereotypes, early warning and monitoring system, assessment tools, response protocols, victim support, strategic litigation, or legal frameworks. This is thanks to the opportunity to work together as evaluators with those colleagues responsibly for policy formulation, planning, monitoring, and implementation of programs. It's clearly a joint effort, and as in the case of the compass, we are just one piece of a toolkit. We should contribute to this goal of a future free from gender-based violence with all stakeholders, duty bearers, and right holders. We don't have all the solutions, but I'm sure that we can contribute to find and implement them. Thank you, Florencia.
Thank you, Sabas, for that wonderful first dive into this question and why this is important. Now we have Svetlana Negrostoyeva. She's the former co-chair of Evalgender Plus and also former feminist TIG under American Evaluation Association. At the Consultative Group for International Agricultural Research, she leads the evaluation function. So Svetlana, tell us, why do you think it's important whether evaluation is our compass to a future free from gender-based violence?
Thank you. Thank you, Florencia. Thank you, colleagues, and welcome to this discussion. I think we all recognize and have faced in one way or another the core challenge in our practice. Evaluations that look backward, while gender-based violence and violence against women and intimate partner violence are around us at the workplaces, in the interventions, and in the contexts and environments where we operate. New drivers such as digital harassment, climate stress, migration, and economic shocks are reshaping risks daily. It is very important for all of us to adopt a forward-looking evaluation mindset and not looking backwards and apply the gender-responsive and rights-based evaluations approaches. We are launching today, actually, the guidelines around evaluating gender equality and gender diversity and inclusion, both organizationally inside and organizational context and in the interventions that our organization implements. And we think that looking at anticipating harm, checking for organizational compliances and governance, servicing invisible forms of violence internally and in the programming with end users and beneficiaries of our interventions can be done with evaluation. So forward-looking and not backward-looking evaluation approaches. Thank you.
Thank you, Svetlana. And now we move to Rajib Nandi. Rajib is a chairperson of the Community of Evaluators of South Asia and the Vice President of Sambodhi Research and Communications. So Rajiv, tell us, why is this topic important to you?
Thank you, Florencia, and thank you, colleagues. It's an honor to be part of this dialogue today. So yes, the topic matters to me. We all acknowledge that violence against women and other genders undermines broader development goals, limits human potential, and perpetuates inequality in society. And in this context, evidence is one of the few levers that can shift power for survivors, especially those most at risk. Evaluation, when gender responsive and intersectional, tells us what works for whom and under what conditions. And just as importantly, where harms or blind spots persist, while amplifying the voices of those most affected. It fosters accountability and learning, helping us refine interventions and ensure inclusion across identities, particularly the most marginalized. Finally, I would also like to emphasize that as an evaluator, my responsibility doesn't end by conducting a gender responsive evaluation. My commitment is to ensure findings don't sit on shelves. They must travel to decision tables and translate into budgets, SOPs, and rights affirming policies. That's how evaluation becomes our compass and our engine, and for ending gender-based violence. On this day, highlighting evaluators' role signals our collective determination to create safer environments for women, girls, and all genders everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajib. Thank you very much for that. And now we move to Evelyn Naome Kagi Kabule. Evelyn is a former chairperson of the African Parliamentarians Network of Development Evaluation. So Evelyn, tell us what's key about the session today.
Thank you so much, Florencia, and I'd like to thank everybody who is listening to this very important subject where we are discussing whether evaluation is our compass to a future free from gender-based violence. And I'm looking at this topic from the parliamentary perspective. As you are all aware, I'll just remind you of the 4 roles of Parliament in every work that we do. We are supposed to represent our continent. We are supposed to do oversight. We are supposed to appropriate or do budgeting, and then we're supposed to come up with laws or policies, which is legislation. So when we are looking at whether evaluation serves as a compass, and I would say yes, because from the parliamentary perspective, it helps by guiding policy reforms. It ensures accountability and driving effective interventions. And we're doing this by critically examining the gender-based violence policies and programs. Evaluation helps us as parliamentarians to understand what works and what doesn't work, where to direct legislative and funding efforts. That is when we're doing the budgeting. And it also helps us in fostering a rights-based approach to equality. So evaluation gives us a tool for parliamentary action. As I said, informs and guides policy. The evaluation results provide evidence to influence and achieve policy reforms. It also helps in creating legislation that addresses gender-based violence effectively. Evaluation also ensures accountability, and it's through evaluation that parliamentarians can hold government agencies, service providers, and even their own institutions accountable for their commitment and actions to end gender-based violence. And it also promotes a rights-based approach. And of course, it helps us to ensure that the rights of individuals are at the center of policy and implementation, which is a core tenet of parliamentary duty. So we have to have drivers for intervention, for effective interventions, where we are coming up with gender responsive and inclusive evaluation methods to help identify the most effective interventions and programs to prevent and respond to GBV. So thank you so much. That forms the basis of why I am in favor of the theme, and it's very key in the parliamentary perspective.
Thank you, Evelyn, for that introduction. Really, thank you everyone for this energizing start. I think if each of you brought, very thought-provoking perspectives to the table. I think Sabas, you highlighted the work of UNED, you highlighted the work of the UN and also other partners working together, and have all this work have really contributed to really come up with methodologies, and really for methodologies that will help evaluation to move forward those legal frameworks to really understand what doesn't work and what worked for change. Svetlana, thank you. Also very excited about the new guidelines as well. I think you really focus on the drivers, on really this forward-looking mindset, looking ahead, looking really forward to try to understand how all this evaluation and the guidelines are going to help us change things and change things everywhere, also at the core places, and really anticipating harm. I think that really stuck with me very, very much. And Rajiv, thank you also so much for your work. Like, evaluation is telling us what works, what doesn't work, is amplifying the voices. I think that's very important, really amplifying the voices of those that are usually left behind, and mostly in this area, right? In the area of trying to eliminate gender-based violence. Also, this idea of your responsibility as an evaluator. I think that's very important. And I think that I want to, really bring that into the discussion. As evaluators, we have to also make sure these evaluations and these findings are not on shelves. We have to be also actionable. And finally, Evelyn, thank you for your words, really, from the parliamentary perspective, really the accountability to the citizens. We are citizens of the world, right? And I think that's really very important, how as parliamentarians you represent the citizens, and how you do legislation, and how evaluation is used to guide policy reforms. So thank you. This was really the introduction, and now we are going into the debate, and we want to fire up this dialogue. So we're going to launch a quick poll with a bold statement, something to challenge our assumptions and to push our thinking, and really try to unpack all the roadblocks and the opportunities to see how evaluation, eliminates gender-based violence. So our bold statement is: evaluation is a rear view mirror showing us where we've been while gender-based violence continues to accelerate in new insidious forms. So there's a poll. Everybody probably is looking at that. Please, you can agree, or you can disagree, or you can also have a nuanced view. So please vote, and we'll see how we're doing. We also invite the ones who are watching us on LinkedIn to share their answers. You can comment on LinkedIn, so we see the results. I think we have, the agree and the nuanced view, really next to each other. Evaluation is a rear view mirror showing us where we've been while gender-based violence continues to accelerate in new insidious form. So I think we have now, yes, let's see, we have a 56% that is agreeing with this bold statement. It's really running up. I think this is really what our listeners today and everyone is agreeing with. Evaluation is a rear view mirror. It is showing us where we've been. We have very little people disagreeing with that, and we have quite a few with a nuanced view. which is very interesting. Please comment on LinkedIn also your nuanced view, your agreement, everything. And I think now we can, take it up to our panelists. Also, please use a Q&A function and tell us there why you are agreeing with this, why you're not agreeing with this statement. We want to hear from you, all of you, our listeners today. But let's go now, I guess. Let's go to our panelists. Let's bring back this bold statement to our panelists, and I want to know where do you stand on this? I think we can, Okay. So I'm going to repeat the bold statement for all. Evaluation is a rear view mirror showing us where we've been while gender-based violence continues to accelerate in new insidious form. Again, our panelists, you're welcome to agree, to disagree, or to share a nuanced take. So I'm going to give the floor to Svetlana. Over to you.
I'm great. It's great to see such overwhelming support for an agreement. From a professional and from a personal standpoint, of course, also agree. We cannot vote as panelists, by the way. So it is important that we get higher percentage on those agreeing and start and enhance implementation of the practices in our M&E work from inside out, and organizational aspects as well as those benefiting the end users of our interventions. This dual hatting is very important, and it allows us, if we look at the mirror, we have to look inwards first before we look outwards. Thank you.
Sorry, everyone. Sabas, over to you now.
Thank you, Florencia. To make it fun, I disagree. Evaluation is not only a rear view mirror, but also a windshield looking at the future and the open road ahead. And as a windshield, its scope is larger because in evaluation, where you are going is more important than where you have been. Evaluation are not just progress reports on achievements for accountability, they contribute to that, but they are also a deep independent exploration using some methodological frameworks to search for solutions with the participation of all stakeholders, aimed at learning and contributing to decision making. The UN acknowledgement standards, for example, emphasizing this role related to gender, human rights, and leaving no one behind, aimed to integrate these values in all stages in evaluations. This includes gender-responsive analysis, identifications of lessons learned, and good practices to be replicated. And very important, the formulation of evidence-based results and results-oriented recommendations. They should be focused on their use for the future. In my experience evaluating gender-based violence in UN human rights, I think how recommendations have contributed to the development of strategies, enhanced consultation, and engagement with stakeholders. Also, preparation of disseminating and guidance of tools, among other concrete future-oriented products. It's important always to aim to achieve results in terms of accountability processes, adopting a victim-centered approach, and respond more effectively to gender-based violence. Evaluations can contribute to that. And something very important, as evaluators, our role doesn't end with the participatory formulation of recommendations, but also it continues with the methodological support for the formulation of action plans, the monitoring of implementation, and ensuring the recommendations are considered in future interventions. Thank you.
Thank you, Saba. Thank you very much for that and for your bold also position disagreeing with our bold statement. And now we take it to Evelyn. Evelyn, please tell us, where do you stand on this? Is evaluation a rear view mirror?
Thank you so much. I think I stand at the nuance because this is really something that it tickles our mind. As much as it may be true that evaluation is a rear view mirror. Yes, it could be, but for what? Let's not look at evaluation simply by putting it within that metaphor of a rear view mirror, because here we are using it to get solutions for the gender-based violence, and it cannot be made, the solutions to GBV cannot be made in obscurity. We need to decide on the right type of the evaluation based on what we are looking for. For example, if we are looking at the underlying factors that control, that contribute to the problems of gender-based violence, and then we are to develop strategies to prevent future incidents, then we have to look at evaluation as the mirror to take us forward. So the statement of stopping at evaluation being a rear view mirror, just that, does not occur well to me, because yes, it's a rear view mirror, but it helps us to take us forward. It helps us to identify the root causes, for example, of GBV. By looking at it, it gives us the evidence of how to come up with laws, for example, in the parliamentary setting. It helps us to develop strategies for the root causes. It helps us to implement the preventive measures to stop GBV from continuing. So we use evaluation as that rearview mirror, but to give us the forward thinking, focusing on prevention rather than the past incidents. We have to come up with a proactive approach, or the real-time monitoring and the future-focused questions using that mirror. So I cannot say I agree totally, and I cannot say I disagree, but it helps us to move forward in a proactive way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Evelyn. That was very, very clear. And thank you for your very interesting, nuanced view on the subject matter. And now we take it to Rajib. Please tell us.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so my response too resonates with most of our other panelists. What I see here in the poll result, that evaluation is often seen only as rear view mirror, showing us where we have been. But that lens is only one part of the story. While it's true that evaluation documents past interventions and outcomes, evaluation is also a vital tool for charting new paths in the face of emerging insidious forms of gender-based violence, including those driven by technology. So our dynamic evaluation framework doesn't just assess what has already happened, it provides the foundation for ongoing risk analysis, real-time adaptation, and stakeholder learning, so that programs keep pace with the evolving nature of gender-based violence. So in practice, this means integrating systems thinking, participatory monitoring, rapid feedback loops that enable prevention efforts to stay relevant, responsive, and future-facing. So while the rear view mirror analogy holds some truth, when evaluation is intentional and context-specific, it actively informs innovation. So if we design evaluation for foresight, equity, and decision timeliness, evaluation becomes our steering, not just our memory, helping institutions move faster than the evolving forms of gender-based violence. Thank you.
Excellent, Rajib. Thank you so much for that final statement and final thoughts on this bold statement. And really, all of this very, very interesting. I think it really pushes us forward on how we think about evaluation. And really thank you for your honesty and your boldness in how really you are approaching this issue, which is so important. I think very, very, very good to hear from Svetlana, right, on this, agreeing with this. It is our rear view mirror. It's really looking back that we're going to learn, and this is really the basis, of course, of evaluation. But also, Sabas telling us it's a windshield, right? We're looking ahead. We have this big, window where we have to look and we have to explore what are the methods, how we engage with stakeholders, how we integrate our values into this, and really pushing us to look forward into recommendations. So it's not really looking backwards. It's really like pushing us forward. And as we know, evaluation doesn't end with the recommendations, right? We have to continue working with our stakeholders to really implement all this. And Evelyn's, your nuanced view, also very, very interesting. Is it rear view? Well, yes, we have to look backwards, but we also need to look forward, right? Because it's that mirror that actually reflect us and take us forward to really understand what are the strategies we need to develop to address the root causes for our future. And I think you really brought us, Evelyn, the perspective of a parliamentarian, right? I mean, the person who is going to use that evaluation to look forward. And Rajiv, again, also, it's true that it's a rear view mirror, but evaluation is vital. And I like, Rajiv, you brought up this idea of vitality, right? I mean, sometimes we all think, evaluation is static, it's on the shelves, we read, it's report, but no, it's a vitality, right? It's due direction, it's real-time adaptation. And I love that, that thinking, like we have to adapt with evaluation in terms of move forward. So thank you for all of this. And now we're going to dive deeper. We're going to go into more specific questions for each of you because we want to really understand, more on these issues. And also we really want, each other, you as panelists, to basically build on each other responses. So Sabas, I'm going to go deeper into what you were saying, and I'm going to ask you now, how can gender responsive evaluation methodologies, and since you were the co-chair of the UNEG working group on this that worked very hard on putting together one of the major guidelines on this, so how can these methodologies be effectively integrated to ensure that the voices of all individuals, particularly those most marginalized, are genuinely heard and addressed in the evaluation process? So this is over to you, and this is your deep dive question.
Thank you, Florencia. This is an important question. And effectively, in the UN evaluation group, we focused some years ago on providing guidance in the integration of gender and human rights in evaluations in the most practical, concrete, and user-friendly way. Personally, I like guidance that tell me exactly what to do and how, useful tips, concrete actions, and relevant examples. And I've been lucky to come in the UN working group on gender, disability, and human rights with colleagues who share this approach with me. From this experience and from the methodology, here are some tips. First, it's key to have the right formulation of evaluation terms of reference, very specific, addressing in the evaluation scope, objectives, criteria, and questions, the purpose of conducting gender-responsive evaluation, asking evaluators to provide relevant findings, particularly in these areas, concrete and actionable recommendations. Terms of reference should also integrate gender considerations in evaluation teams, reference groups, and methodologies for data collection and analysis. Let's go deeper on this. First, key methodology suggestion, a thorough stakeholder mapping is key. Identify those relevant stakeholders whose voices should be heard. Don't think that we know everything about GBB. It's not the case, sorry, but we can involve those who know better, inviting experts to the reference group, consulting colleagues at the country level, asking to identify those stakeholders, and ensuring that during the scoping phase, they are involved and map. Then let's go to data collection. Mixed methods are key. This implies using document review, stakeholders interviews, focus groups, surveys, secondary data analysis, etc. But pay particular attention to the inclusion of women and individuals marginalized or who are discriminated against. For example, in the case of focus groups, making sure that participants are homogeneous, no power difference are among them, so they can affect the spontaneity of the interaction. Access barriers is an other key area to address. They should be acknowledged and mitigated, seeking to understand ethical implications, sensitivity, confidentiality issues. These are key on GBB. We should be aware of community practices, cultural norms, or even language limitations. We can consider practical measures such as timing the interviews to fit home obligations, choosing physically accessible venues, providing even financial support to cover travel costs, etc. And finally, think of data disaggregation and ensure that analysis examines whether interventions reduce power imbalances and strengthen accountability and empowerment, contributing to formulation of useful, substantive conclusions and actionable recommendations addressing gender-based violence issues. Thank you.
Excellent, Sabas. Thank you very, very much with that. And I think for all those practical tips that are also so important and so convenient. And I think we are sharing also the full guidance on the chat. So please look at that when you have a time. And now, Rajiv, the question to you to really dive deeper into this. And here we are looking at technology facilitated gender-based violence. So, given the escalating nature of technology-based and technology facilitated gender-based violence, how do you think evaluation strategies can effectively measure the prevalence and effectiveness of interventions designed to prevent and respond to this evolving challenge? So really looking at this particularity of technology-based facilitated violence.
Right.
Over to you.
Right. Thank you, Florencia. It's a crucial question. The rise of technology-facilitated gender-based violence, including gendered disinformation, is pushing many women, girls, and LGBTQI persons out of public spaces into self-sponsored censorship or even out of leadership. Tackling technology-facilitated gender-based violence is not only about safety; it's also about equality and democracy. Now let's deep dive into it. Now I would like to divide my response in three quick parts. First, the measuring prevalence. We need tools that name harms as they occur online. This means survey modules that explicitly ask about cyber stalking, about doxing, about non-consensual intimate images, deepfakes, and hate rates, using a 12-month recall period to match the speed of the internet. Pair national surveys with sentinel panels on high-risk groups, young women, LGBTQI plus people, women, human rights defenders, journalists, and gig workers, perhaps. UNFPA's support to violence against women prevalence studies is a very strong anchor. Many countries now adding ICT-specific questions and disaggregation, but complement this with qualitative interviews to capture context. Which platform, what technology, who was the perpetrator, what were the offline consequences of this? Second, evaluating effectiveness. I think we should measure outcomes that matter to survivors and systems, not just awareness. For platform and policy interventions, track median trackdown time, time to account recovery, repeat victimization, and reporting conversion from incident to reporting. So for survivor services, legal aid, counseling, digital scrutiny clinics use matched cohorts or stepped with designs to estimate impact on safety restoration and well-being. UN Women's guidance on gender responsive intersectional evaluation is a solid frame. Make sure indicators show who benefits and who is left out. Combine multiple sources, surveys, platform analytics, helpline, and case management data and survivor feedback to see both statistical change and lived experiences. And thirdly, very quickly, innovations and partnership, very important here. Use mobile surveys and digital cameras for real-time insights, especially with youth. Keep instruments dynamic, so emerging abuses like AI-generated imagery are captured quickly. IDRC supported research networks and Association for Progressive Communications, feminist tech partners demonstrate ethical, community-led monitoring and social listening. At national level, align ministries, cyber cells, helplines, platforms, and civil society on common definitions and data standards, so results are comparable and actionable. The ICRW study recently in India is a very good example of mapping technology-facilitated gender-based violence policies and program gaps to guide future action. So the bottom line here is, if we design evaluation to be survivor centered, equity aware, method plural, and decision timed, we can track the true scale of technology facilitated gender-based violence and show which solutions, policy, product, or service actually keep people safe. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Rajiv. No, that was really very good and very interesting. Also, like the three basically items, right? The tools, the measuring, the effectiveness, and the innovations. And so I think that actually give us, a nice frame and framework on how to kind of address technology facilitated GBV. And now, Svetlana, then now over to you, your question to really dig a bit deeper. So Svetlana, to what extent should thematic evaluations, so here I'm really putting the emphasis on the thematic evaluations, integrate gender responsive, right-based and inclusive approaches, and how effectively do these approaches strengthen survivors' agency and produce equitable outcomes across diverse and marginalized groups? Over to you, Svetlana.
Thank you, Florencia. I will echo a lot of what has been said by previous colleagues because I know we all agree in our professional spaces with a lot of this context. But it is important, in our context of our work in research for development. CGIAR is an organization of a network of research centers across the globe, and we're talking about that context and thematic context, agriculture. And it is important because GBV is not only protection, but it also shapes agency, participation, decision-making, and the ability of women, youth, and marginalized group and end users who benefit from research, but also by whom the research is conducted, including in the fields and in the trials of agricultural testing. For us, stepping back, and we always emphasize that it's the importance of frameworks and standards that guide our evaluation practices and making sure that we bring everybody to the table, to the right table. So, for example, we have a quality of science evaluation criterion, which complemented the OECD DAC criteria, and it looks at whether research methods are gender responsive, ethical, legitimate for marginalized participants, and how young researchers contribute within organizational setups and in conducting their work. We also have standards, equity standards in the framework, ensuring attention to fairness, dignity, inclusion, and doing no harm. And then it's important that throughout the evaluation implementation, those are maintained. Of course, thinking about rights-based intersectional designs can benefit survivors and those who are potentially can be affected by the gender-based violence. Evaluability assessment has proven to be a useful tool for us to establish integration in theories of change and who will conduct intervention, what questions should be asked and at which levels. And for example, we did an evaluation of a gender platform where evaluability assessment helped us design and then co-develop recommendations that had a high uptake. The data point, of course, has been brought up before, and there's never enough data, but there is a lot of data out there. And such surveys as DHS, Demographic and Health Surveys, Violence Against Women surveys for girls, and Women in Agriculture Index, they all collect data for specific context and in specific situations. Applying gender responsive and feminist evaluation approaches allows in any thematic, in any sector, to look at the power dynamics and gender dynamics. And feminist methods ensure voice, safety, and reflexivity, especially inside the organizations and looking at the mirror and all those marginalized benefits. And last but not the least, the point around co-producing recommendations with the evaluant and end users that can never be repeated enough. Recommendations help drive the future of the programming, and this is where it is important that they're done in a way that brings everybody to the table of co-developing them and then implementing, and then that they're tracked and that their organizations are held accountable for happens, and recommendations must be actionable, rights-based, and power-aware. And getting back to our earlier comments, on rear view, it is the value add that all of us bring in the evaluation design, implementation, and development of those recommendations to move forward the agendas. And last but not the least is, in general, continuing to always, again, look inside as much as outside, prioritizing recommendations to strengthen organizational practices, such as grievances policies, the violence and bullying policies, but also looking into the programmatic application with external on the ground, and evaluating leadership commitment, specialist capacity, and integration into MEL systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Svetlana. Thank you for that deep dive into methodologies, and also how at the CGIAR you're also implementing all these methods. It's really fascinating, and also fascinating to hear how, GBV and, evaluation of gender-based violence and how to focus on agency. I think that's a very important point. Also on the standards of dignity, no harm, and really having all those protocols in place when we're conducting evaluation. The point on evaluability assessment, very important. That's like a very kind of, as evaluators, we know how important that is. And of course, the feminist approaches and, that allow us to look also at the power imbalance is always there to keep us in check. So Evelyn, now the question to you to, really, dig deeper into all of this. And so for you, yes, my question is like, how can evaluation move beyond documenting outcomes to becoming a proactive and influential force, directly shaping and accelerating gender-based violence policy reforms? And I think as a parliamentarian, this is right spot on, and this is really where we want evaluation to go. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Florencia. For us to move beyond documenting outcomes, evaluation can become a proactive force by using participatory and informative evaluations. That is, building a robust theory of change from the start and conducting equity-focused assessments that analyze not only the results, but also how and why they are achieved. When we're looking at the process of evaluation, we need to engage all stakeholders. We need to examine implementation and the context, and we need to critically analyze the power dynamics that we have, especially in the circles. Evaluation can now provide timely feedback and strategic insights to directly influence policy designs and reforms, and rather than just measuring success after the fact. So how do we do this? We engage stakeholders. One, we need to involve a diverse range of stakeholders, including especially those that are most affected by the gender-based violence, and of course the policy implementers throughout the entire process of evaluation. That is from planning to analysis. This builds buy-in and ensures findings that are relevant and actionable. Because when you involve stakeholders, they will buy in because they will have participated from the beginning, and you get facts, you get timely data, you get real-time data, which will help you in the process of evaluation and in coming up with proactive policies. Then the second one is we need to adopt a formative approach. Let's not use evaluation just to assess final outcomes, but we need to use it as a continuous ongoing process to improve the policy designs and implementation in real time. And of course, this allows us to make adjustments in policies and also correct courses as we move along in the policy implementation. Sometimes we come up with policies, but along the way, we find that maybe this policy is not working. So with the evaluation, it will help us now to make corrective measures as we get along in policy implementation. Then the other thing on how we can do it is to build a theory of change, of course. We create a detailed theory of change that maps out how the policy is expected to work. When people come up with policies, do they understand how this policy is going to work? We need to include mechanisms and assumptions behind it. And of course, this will help us identify potential pitfalls and also the unintended consequences before they happen. And it will allow now the evaluators to assess the logic of the policy, not just at the end result, but as we get along in policy implementation. So in a nutshell, we need to use especially what we call the start. We need to, when we are starting, do we have all the stakeholders involved? Are all these stakeholders aware of what we are supposed to do, Where is the support? Do we give the skills and resources needed to address the gender-based violence? Because sometimes when we look at gender-based violence, we only look at the women, but there are some men out there who experience the violence, but they're simply quiet. How do we bring them on board? And then the action, how do we take action? Because there are various stakeholders who are responsible for specific actions. The community, when we look at the community, in my country, we have what we call the local council governance. And the local council, which we call the local council 1, that's a community governance, and it is supposed to implement the policies that are set up. So if we have information about a certain gender-based violence in a certain area, how does the community come in to help? And the activists, how do they come in to ensure that actions are indeed implemented? And of course, the government, where we have the legislative, we have the executive and the judiciary. The judiciary sometimes is left behind, but here we are saying we don't want to leave anybody behind. So the most important thing is to ensure that evaluation is not only looking at outcomes, but it helps us to be proactive, and it forces an influential force that will involve everybody, all the stakeholders, to be able to shape GBV policy reforms. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Evelyn, for that wonderful, fantastic, bold statement in response to our bold statement. I think, and this is really very important because we're talking about involving stakeholders. Stakeholders are the citizens, are the ones who then will have and are going to be impacted from those policies that are a result of recommendations of an evaluation. So they need to be involved in your evaluation, right? And I think, Evelyn, this is what you're talking about, and really have them integrated, the local councils, those that are going to decide on those policies. So they are the ones who are going to provide the data for the evaluation and directly implicated in how those recommendations are going forward. And I also touch base on what Svetlana was saying, this co-creation of recommendations. So, all of these answers are really very well connected. And I think also trying to look at the force of evaluation to move forward, the force of evaluation, and specifically for eliminating gender-based violence, which is such a pervasive form of violence, right? And so how can we really utilize these evaluations in every single context with all these methodologies that we have to really enable new policies based on evidence and real-time evidence that have looked at what stakeholders have said to really change and eliminating this form of violence. So thank you, everyone. This was really wonderful. And now, I want to hear from the audience. Let's take it up to the audience. What resonates with you? What are your reflections on this? What would you like to share related to this question? Is evaluation our compass to a future free from gender-based violence? So please, if there is anyone in the audience who would like to, share their question live, please, raise your hand. Also, friends on LinkedIn, please, feel free to send us your questions. Also, we have the chat function there, so please feel free to also drop your question there. So just trying to see if there is any question, anyone that would like to address or share a reflection. Any question on the Q&A? I'm trying to look here. We have a lot of reflections on our Q&A, really, and again, aligned to what we're talking here, which is, evaluation, of course, is about backward looking, and this is Eleanor Hazel here sharing, but evaluation can also show us where we're heading. And I think this is really what we've been discussing here today. We also see that it's important to look into, the new forms of GBV that are coming to place. I don't know, on LinkedIn, is there anything on LinkedIn? I'm not, I don't have that in front of my eyes, but perhaps there is any other questions there. So I'm gonna then, look a little bit around our panelists here and really trying to, fire up now, the fire up round at the for our panelists. Yeah. So because we are also, on the top of the hour, so now we're going to do this quick 30-second rapid fire with our panelists. I want to hear from them and to share one key takeaway or one action point that is related to our discussion today. Something really, really that, our audience can take forward to shape the future of evaluation. So I'm going to give 30 seconds each, starting with Evelyn.
Thank you
30 seconds.
so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. One thing that I would like to emphasize here is ensure that we make evaluation involving. We make it involving so that, especially I'm talking about the parliamentary perspective. Most of the time we need evidence-based results to be able to do the work of a parliamentarian. But if we are not involved from the beginning of the evaluations, then and then results are just bumped onto the parliamentarians, they may not react, they may not help really in the discussions which they have in the House. So I'm calling upon evaluators to involve all stakeholders, especially the policymakers, the legislators, so that at the time when they have to use the evaluation results, they're really useful to them and they have a buy-in and they're involved. Thank you so much. I don't know whether the 30 seconds are over, but thank you so much for that.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Evelyn, for that. Sabas, over to you.
Thank you. My suggested action point from today will be to conduct thorough research looking for guidance and tools conducive to a gender-responsive evaluations. The message is you don't need to start from scratch when proposing or planning an evaluation on gender-based violence issues. Entities such as UNEG, UNFPA, UN Women, UN Human Rights, and others have guidance, tools, examples that you could use as basis for evaluations. I'm not contributing to the elimination of gender-based violence. Don't reinvent the wheel. Look for the available tools, and if you can find them, just feel free to ask. We all here share the same purpose, supporting those who are affected and make sure that every woman and girl can live in safety and dignity, enjoying a world free from gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabas. Thank you so much. And now over to you, Svetlana.
Thank you, colleagues. Of course, Sabas, you stole mine in terms of not reinventing the wheel, and I can reiterate and maybe build on that. It engage with colleagues, engage in events like this and guidelines, reading and following the guidelines. We actually have integrated the UNEG and UNFPA elements into our guidelines because in our space, the research and science that we're working with is not the social science and research, but the physical and biophysical sciences and research, which are different. So the unit of analysis and entry point is kind of not a human being, but for example, a banana and potato. So working with those scientists and researchers is very different than working in the social protection. So make it context specific, what you do and how. We with partners in FAO, IFAD, WFP, CGIAR, and NDB and UNEP have a community of practice, Evolve for Earth, for those of you who don't know. And I will provide a link with the many discussions that have already been had on topics from racism in evaluation to disability in evaluation. And when communities come together and learn and share, this is very important to be precise and to be context specific in when we evaluate. And again, I'll reiterate what I said before. Also, looking inwards is as important as looking outwards. In evaluations, and what we evaluate and how we evaluate and who evaluates, and bringing those lens with you at all times is important to prevent the underlying norms and practices that lead to gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Svetlana, for that. And now, Rajib.
Thank you, Florencia. 3 quick points. Accountability needs the mirror, action needs headlights. So looking back is essential. Documenting harm, inequalities, institutional gaps, all are important. But for gender-based violence, especially technology-facilitated forms, we must pair retrospective studies with prospective and real-time methods. Second, from a description to prevention, if we anchor evaluation in gender transformative intersectional theories of change, it tells us not just whether something worked, but why, for whom, and under what conditions. And third, make use inevitable. Evidence only matters if it's used. Build used architecture. And all this is possible with partnership and innovation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all those last fired up interventions. So we heard really the importance of involving parliamentarians. I mean, those are, the ones that are going to implement the recommendations of the evaluation. So calling evaluators to involve parliamentarians. And then we have the importance of the guidance and the tools. We do not have to reinvent the wheel. If we need to evaluate a gender-based violence interventions, we have the tools. We have plenty of tools. They are all available, and we can tweak them possibly, but we do not have to start from scratch. And then engaging with events. Svetlana is reminding us this is very important. Get to these events, learn what others are thinking, what others are doing, and how we are, and the need to follow these guidelines to do evaluations, of course, and also being context specific. And finally, Rajib, your 3 points are right on target, really. The accountability needs the mirror. We need to look back also when we're trying to understand what works and what doesn't work. And then, the description to prevention, right? The why and for whom is also very important. And I think the main point here is the use architecture. And I really like that phrase, right? Make use part of your architecture. All our evaluations should really be utilization focused, right? And I think that's really key. And I just, there are really strong calls for action here. I think there is a lot that have been shared, approaches, and really making evaluation be really the contributor to a world free of violence, right? Based on the methodologies, on the strategies, and also on the amplification of the voices of all of those that are marginalized and that need to speak up when we're doing evaluations, and really taking all of that into consideration to really move forward our recommendations and the real change. I think that's very important. And something that Saba said at some point, which I want to bring back because I think it's so important and someone we forget, is the stakeholder mapping as part of our methodologies, how important that is. And I think when we are doing evaluations of gender-based violence, it's even very, very, very important. Really do take time to do that mapping, to really understand who are all those stakeholders, who is your evaluation going to really be focused on. And again, let's remember evaluation. Evaluation is very important. Evaluation goes beyond the numbers. We have numbers. I shared data at the beginning, but that's not the same, because evaluation is going to help us analyze what's underlying, really the norms, the gender norms, the power imbalances, and also the systemic discrimination that affect us all. So really understanding why things are happening, right, beyond the plain numbers. So, as we wrap up, I think we are almost there. I just want to make and say a big, big thank you to all our amazing speakers today, all our partners, and everybody that joined this very vibrant conversation. So that you all know, this is the fourth in a series of Future of Evaluation dialogues. So stay tuned for the fifth dialogue that is going to be next month and commemorating Human Rights Day on December 10th. And there we will have a new question and really another very key question: is evaluation key to realizing universal human rights? You can find the link for the registration posted in the chat and also in Eval for Action. So please register ahead of time, stay in the loop. And, as we are now leaving, I really invite you all to carry all this energy here in this webinar back in your work and to continue to shape the future of evaluation for a more inclusive, innovative, influential, and really use evaluation to eliminate gender-based violence. So thank you very much to all.